While I was playing Balatro, a question came to mind. Could an AI beat this game? For the past few years, I have kept hearing on how quickly various AI have been advancing, especially ChatGPT. So, I decided to put ChatGPT, the AI, in a challenge against Balatro. As the whole thing with AI is that it learns over time, the AI will get 10 attempts to reach ante-8 and beat a game of Balatro. But, how will ChatGPT play? It can't control the game itself. What I'll do is that whenever there's a choice to be made, whether it be choosing what cards to discard, what hands to play, or what to buy from the shop, I will provide all necessary information to the AI in a text prompt. From there, the AI will make every choice in how the game is played. Now, will the AI learn the game fast enough to beat the 8th ante? To start off, in a text prompt I told ChatGPT that it would be playing a game of Balatro, and that it would be in charge of every choice made in the game. Then, I told it to ask any questions if there were any concerns or if it was missing any information to make the best choice possible. Following this, the first step was choosing what deck to play. So, I asked the AI. This was the first point where it posed a question. It asked me what all the decks were, which clued me in that it might be missing more information on the game than I thought. I gave the AI all the information on the different decks, and it ended up choosing the blue deck. With the blue deck selected, we entered the first real choice in the game. ChatGPT could play the first blind to get some money, or skip it to get a rare free joker in the next shop. ChatGPT skipped the first blind, and followed by skipping the second blind to get a free holographic joker in the next shop as well. ChatGPT now faced the boss blind where they needed to score 600 chips. I would now describe to them all the cards that they held in hand, and they would be able to make the choice as to what to discard, what to keep. ChatGPT started by discarding a few cards in the search for a flush of spades. And they immediately gave up on finding the full flush and played 4 spades cards, making a 4 spade flush as their words would say, which did not count as an actual flush. Luckily, they drew straight into a straight, and were able to play to get very close to the 600 chip minimum. They discarded some more cards to get some better hands, and then proceeded to play a 2-pair hand with 6s and 5s, which does get them a little closer, but they're still missing about 200 chips to make it to the minimum. ChatGPT made another attempt at a straight, but there seems to be a gap in it, and they were not able to understand that they needed it to be consecutive in order for it to count. With one hand and one discard left, ChatGPT discarded a few cards to make the best final hand possible, and found themselves with their best hand being another 2-pair, which led them to fall short of the 600 chip minimum. With this, I do think there are many points of improvement, and I do feel like ChatGPT might be missing large parts of information on how Balatro works. Due to this, I went through the Balatro wiki and provided all the information on every single piece of the game. With this new stimulus of information, I asked it once again to give me a new deck to start off with. ChatGPT's choice was the Zodiac deck, which I did not have unlocked. So I went through a really quick game in order to get it unlocked. With the AI's deck of choice in hand, we went straight into the second game. In the upcoming games, I will commentate what is happening instead of breaking down what I sent ChatGPT and what they responded. ChatGPT starts off choosing the Zodiac deck and is faced again with the choice of skipping the blind for a reward or playing it out for some money. They decide to skip the small blind and the big blind and immediately enter into the boss blind. They're giving a pretty good hand to start off with many choices as to what to play. But they end up deciding to play a straight, which gives them a pretty good lead, almost reaching halfway the amount of points that they need in order to beat the chip minimum. And instead of discarding anything for a better hand, they decide to play a pair. They still have 2 hands left and have many more discards left, but they play another pair. And now on their last hand, they still have 3 discards left. They can build up a strong hand to meet the quota, but they play a final pair, which strikes them too low in order to reach the chip minimum. ChatGPT made a lot of choices that could be considered mistakes, as they did lose in the boss blind, but at the end of each round, which means at the end of this round, I gave them a prompt asking them what they could do better and to simply reflect on the last game. Using that information, ChatGPT told me what they think they'll do better or what they could have done better, and hopefully that'll help them learn after each and every game that they play. Going into the third game, ChatGPT once again chose to start off with the Zodiac deck. And then when it came to choosing where to put the small blind or get a reward, they skipped it for a voucher tag and proceeded to skip the big blind as well. Now they went straight into the boss blind, where they threw straight into a flush, which they were able to play to reach nearly the halfway point of the boss blind. They then proceeded to fall into their old bad habits and played a pair of 9s, which didn't give them many points, but it gave them a little bit of progress. They then discarded some few hearts since as they were debuffed this round, and then they proceeded to play another pair, a pair of kings. It really is their favorite hand. They then proceeded to play one final pair of 7s, knocking them out of their third game. But there's still a lot of improvement to come. In the next 4 blinds, ChatGPT was consistent. They consistently chose the Zodiac deck, and they consistently skipped the small blind and the big blind, going straight into the boss blind, hoping to get the benefits from the tags early on after they beat the boss blind. Sadly, they seem to always fall short. They also seem to have big preferences in their play, always favoring any hand that could give them chips in the moment instead of trying to build up a stronger hand. They would only play strong hands whenever they were lucky enough to draw into them. Now, even though they seem to play in the same way during all of these games, I do think there were slight improvements, and after each of them, they would reflect upon the previous game and see how that gets better. And these will be the foundation that could potentially lead to a stronger, longer game in the future. But for now, they struck out one after the other, even with some coming close. None of them made it to the chip minimum. Yet, there was still hope as there were 3 attempts left. As they always do, the AI chose the Zodiac deck, and then when it came to a choice of the small blind or skipping it, they decided to play it, which is a surprising turn of events. It could let them build up some jokers to potentially better tackle later rounds. They start off by discarding a few cards in order to build up a stronger hand. They play 2 kings, which is their favorite sort of hand, a pair. They've been playing pairs this whole time, but then they proceeded by a high card. They haven't even reached 1/3 of the chip minimum, and they only have 2 hands left. They discarded a couple cards to try to build a stronger hand, and they play another pair, this time of 7s. They do reach 100 chips. They can score 180 chips in one hand if needed, but they play one final pair. They finally chose the first blind, but they're still unable to make it to the shop due to their hand choices. Their 8th attempt might have ended quickly, but it did indicate that the ChatGPT program could change the way it plays the game, as it chose the small blind this time, with a plan to build up stronger jokers and build up momentum in order to tackle later blinds. So hopefully with this change, and still further developments in the hands that they play in the blinds, they could make it much further and potentially beat the 8th ante. We start out the 9th attempt with the ChatGPT choosing the Zodiac deck again, and then from learning what they have learned in the past 8 games, they choose the small blind this time, hopefully setting them up to buy some jokers and beating the the boss blind for the first time. They get a strong hand of 3 of a kind to start off with, getting them 1/3 of the way there to finishing off. They discard a few cards to build a stronger hand, and they are able to find another 3 of a kind combined with 2 kings, making a full house, reaching the full chip minimum. This takes them to the shop for the first time. I've never really seen how they interact with it before, but their choice comes down to opening a buffoon pack, and after looking at both the cards, they choose to get the Shoot to the Moon card, which will give them a buff or a molt whenever they have queens in their hands. And they also buy a tarot card, which I guess is the benefit of having the Zodiac hand. They immediately use the tarot card in order to create the potential for a flush, and they played that said flush immediately. I didn't really think I'd see this sort of play from ChatGPT after so many failed attempts, but it got them over the big blind chip minimum immediately. They go into the next shop, and with many choices, there are a good amount of planet cards available, as well as a planet pack. They buy a tarot card that will give them 2 planet cards, as well as a Venus planet card. Immediately, they pop all of it. It does seem like ChatGPT really likes the planet cards, as they believe that if they ever encounter that hand, it'll make it more reliable and they should be able to win more rounds more consistently, as per the text that appeared. They go into the window, they discard any debuff cards that they have. Then they continue to debuff some cards until they are able to build up a stronger and stronger hand. They are able to find a flush, which when playing it, gets them halfway there in order to almost beat their first boss blind, which will be a big jump in progress. Following this, they are able to find 3 of a kind 8s, which is one of the hands that they buffed with their planet cards previously. Now, with that, they were able to beat their first boss blind and led into their first shop after the first ante. They immediately bought the voucher, as having 1 more discard seemed very beneficial in the text that they provided, and they went back to their roots and skipped the first small blind. They went into the big blind and immediately started discarding some cards to build a stronger hand, and they found a flush of spades, which gave them a good amount of chips. Following this, they continued to discard some cards in order to find another flush potentially, as per their text. But after not being able to find a flush, they played a 3 of a kind of 5s, as it is one of their buffed hands. They continued their habit of playing a hand and discarding some more until they found a straight, which is another one of the buffed hands, and was able to push them over the line in order to beat the big blind of the second ante. Now, going into the next shop, they got a free Joker that was buffed, and they bought a second one that would give them a buff whenever they played any face cards. Now, in this second boss blind, they would be faced with a harder challenge than before. After discarding a few cards, they were able to find a flush of clubs, which gave them a bonus from the Joker that would give +5 molt per face card in hand, as well as the first Joker that they got that would give them +13 molt per the queen in their hand. Going into the next shop, they did not find any Jokers, but they find multiple consumables. They bought 2 tarot cards, one to make a steel card and one to make a moon card. They skipped the first blind again and chose 2 club cards. They seem to be building a deck around the clubs at this time. Immediately, they made the play that surprised me last time. After they discarded some cards, they used their Moon Tarot card to create another flush through converting 3 cards into club cards. They also used the Steel Tarot card in order to turn the ace into a steel card. After scoring the flush, they were 2/3 of the way into the chip minimum of the big blind, and they continued by discarding a few cards in order to build another strong hand. Through this, they were able to find a 2-pair, which is not the strongest possible hand, but it got them over the line. Now, this would be their last chance at the shop before going into another boss blind. With this, they bought another tarot card as well as another planet card. They really do like these consumables much more than any Joker, it seems like. Although there really wasn't a choice for a Joker, so it's understandable. But with using the planet card immediately, they went straight into the boss blind, which might pose an issue as it debuffs all club cards, which is the main thing they've been building around. Due to the debuff nature of those cards, they started off by discarding them. And unluckily, they weren't able to really draw into any strong hands, so they kept on discarding and discarding. But they ran out of discards, so now they only had 4 hands left and had to do something with it. Now, with 4 hands left, all they need to do is reach a quarter of the chip minimum. Due to one of the Jokers that they have, Mr. Bones, if they reach 25% of the chip minimum, in this case 1000, the Joker will destroy itself, but they will be able to pass on to the next ante. So ChatGPT doesn't need to play hands that are spectacular in order to reach the 4000s. They just need to play enough to reach 1000 and go on to the next round. So there's no way they can lose this one. They started off by using the tarot card to give bonus points to the ace and the king, and they went back to the roots and played a pair, which is not adequate. Luckily, they only need to reach 1000 points, but they played debuffed cards, which will give them barely any. They only need 800 more points, and their Joker will take effect, because if they only reach 25% of the ante, they'll be able to pass and Joker will be destroyed. They played 3 hands of pairs, and now in the final hand, they attempt to build something, but no, they play a high card, which doesn't even reach them to the 25% minimum. Even though they were unlucky in their draws, they were still supposed to be able to reach 1,000. In my mind, there was no way they weren't going to. So it was devastating to see that they weren't even able to reach a quarter of the chip minimum in order to pass on to the next ante. But that run did show a lot of potential. Although it might be the second to last run, they did get much further than in all 8 previous runs. So hopefully in this final run, they'll able to make it to the 8th ante. Going into their last attempt, ChatGPT chose their old reliable the Zodiac deck. And then once again they played the small blind, a good switch up that gave them potential in the last attempt. Now, in this last game, I'm gonna give more space between the actions, like leave some of the dead spaces inside. They discarded 3 cards and then played a pair, one that they seem to always be drawn to. They do have 4 hearts and a pair of kings that they might play, and they do end up playing it. They're classic, they favored the pairs. Hopefully this run is not drawn short due to their consistent habit of playing pairs. But their following action does come down to discarding a few cards in order to build up a better hand. And now they do play another pair. They're down to their last hand, and this might be cut short. The last chance to make a run might be cut short. Gladly, they do find a 3 of a kind, which will allow them to make it hopefully to the next mall. And they are able to meet the chip minimum in the small blind, pushing them towards the shop and giving them potential to buy some jokers or get some upgrades in order to make the next rounds a little easier. A lot of times between each action there was a lot of dead time because I would have to input every possible choice into ChatGPT for it to make its choice. So that's why it's a little choppy, and it has been choppy in all these cuts. But it does increase the flow. Here I increased the dead space so I can talk a bit more. They continued by discarding a few more cards and continuously made attempts to build up a hand, but they did find a 3 of a kind. I do notice that they do have a big tendency towards first and 3 of a kind, but this time it benefits them as they found a joker that benefits from the 3 of a kind. They were able to be big blind, giving them a good shot at the boss blind depending on what they buy in this second shop here. They did surprise me as they chose to sell the joker they had already bought and bought a joker that gives them extra chips, I believe, whenever they get his flush, and opened up a standard pack giving them 1 playing card. Here they ended up choosing the glass card that would give them a ×2 molt whenever it is played with a chance of breaking, I do believe, and they enter into the boss blind, which is the manacle, reducing their hand size, making it more difficult to build up any sort of hand, especially a flush. But they do have a good starting point with 3 clubs, and they discard a few cards, and now they're at 4 clubs. Discard some more. They're still missing that final club in order to make a flush. That would basically guarantee them the round. They use their final discard and are unable to find a club. So here it seems like they fall back on trying to get as many chips as possible with what they have, so they play the pair, and they do find what they need in order to make a flush, which should guarantee that they pass on to the next round. It does. They reach 1,000 chips, and they're able to pass on to the shop and reach ante 2. Now, they have not really made any moves in order to build up interest, and they spend most of the money as soon as they get it. They do buy a Devil Tarot card, a card that they choose into gold, which will help build up the economy, and they get a Jupiter planning card, which should be helpful with their whole synergy. Right there, they skipped both the small blind and big blind, which will give them a massive boost if they do beat the boss blind, as everything in the next shop will be free. However, here it is a difficult situation, as they are unable to see many of the cards in their hand. To do this, I sort of described to them how it would work, how we were able to determine that some cards were of a certain suit as they were between the hearts, but I labeled them as H1, H2, H3, and so on in order for them to tell me whether they want me to play those cards or not. and they did find that there was a flush, as those two hidden cards were between the hearts, meaning that they were heart cards. This pushed them to nearly beating the round, and no matter what they play, they should be able to beat the round here, as they only need 100 chips. So they should be in a pretty safe spot. It will be curious to see if they use the Devil Tarot card to make a gold card before they finish, and they do not. But they still don't meet the minimum, and they still have another chance to do so in order to build up their economy a bit and potentially get the ball rolling on some interest in order to upgrade their synergy overall. They are able to find a 2-pair, which once they play, they should be able to reach the chip minimum and safely go on to the next shop, which should be a big bonus to them. Due to the big blind they skipped earlier, everything in the shop should be free apart from the voucher. Now they're going with $7 and they are able to buy everything. I did accidentally forget to record that small section, so we skipped right into them having bought all the jokers, opening both vouchers. They got a planet card which buffs their general state, and they used the tarot card in the second pack to buy a planet card. Once again, they keep on skipping these blinds. They seem to think it more beneficial to get the tag than to actually get a bit of money. After looking at all the options, they decide to buy the joker. That would give them a little bit more mold, but since they had the option of getting two, they will have to either sell one or skip the second joker card. They do end up deciding to sell the madness card, and say that the madness card would potentially sabotage the other jokers, so they would prefer to get rid of it. Now going into the big blind, they still have a bit of a flush synergy, but now they can get some 3 of a kind, and there's a bunch of different options as well with the hands that they upgraded with the planet cards. They do end up playing a 2-pair, which doesn't give them any particular synergy with anything apart from the popcorn, and the popcorn will help them out in a lot of these hands, but it does have a limited lifespan. They end up playing another 2-pair, which is helpful as they are all even cards, and that should get them nearly over the line. They're missing 600. With 2 hands, there's no way they don't make it here as well. I did say that for the 9th attempt, and they did fail, but there's no way they shouldn't be able to make it here. They play a final 2-pair. It might be their new favorite hand, and they make it over the line and are able to go into the next shop to get ready for the next boss blind. There are a lot of card options, only one joker, a lot of planet cards, but they do decide upon selling the vampire card and to getting one that will give them tons of golden cards. They still have not used their devil tarot card, which is interesting as they were very adamant about using the moon tarot cards in the past. But now they're going to go into the tooth boss blind, which will make them potentially lose a lot of money now that they have a lot of money to lose. But maybe their new joker will make up for it as they will get a bunch of gold cards. They do find themselves with a flush that is at level 3 due to all the Jupiter cards they've had. And due to their current joker synergy, they're able to beat the boss blind in one single hand. Now, going into the next shop, there might be some things they can do to tie their whole synergy and jokers a little more together, as it is a little spread out. So I don't know how viable that'll be late game. They did get a world card, which will allow them to turn 3 cards into spades, which I do believe they really like to use those cards in order to make flushes, as we have seen in the previous attempts. Now they do skip the first small blind, doubling their $0 into $0. I'm not sure why they did this, but it was very interesting. They discard a few cards, including their glass card, and they play their favorite, a pair of queens this time, which they do get turned into gold cards, could provide some benefits in the future. They're 1 card off a spade flush, and they do use their tarot card in order to turn most of their hand into spades. They should be able to make a flush here and get them really close to the chip minimum for this blind. They play the spade, turn 1 more card into a gold card. I'm still waiting to see when they're going to use that Devil Tarot card. And here, they don't have that many flush potential options. It could be one with the spades and with the diamonds. They get 4 spades, not quite enough for a flush. And they still play it, I think, with their initial confusion from the past, thinking that 4 cards can make a flush. Sadly, that is wrong. But they have 1 hand left in order to make 1,300 more. But they are able to find a full house we should be able to take them over the line and to the next round. We're still safe. This is the furthest that the AI has gotten, and on their last attempt. Now, here they're faced with more jokers. Here I forgot, I accidentally cut it out a bit, but they did only buy the strength card. Now with the strength card and the devil card, they do like using these Sarah cards. It's a big benefit of the Zodiac deck having access to them, and it is one of their favorite things. They do decide to immediately upgrade the 2 best cards that are able to be turned into a flush, as the Queen card is currently debuffed, and they might be looking for another Spades flush, which is one of their favorite hands. They are unable to draw a 5th spade, so they immediately resort to playing another pair. And they did draw a spade that they could have drawn if they discarded into making that flush, but sadly they did not. And now they resort to playing a 2 pair along with an 8 to free up some space. But at this space, they might not be able to make the chip minimum. They need to score 9,000 chips in 2 hands. And they don't really have that much potential for any particular big hand. They have a pair of 5s. And that's really about it. They could draw into a straight with the Jack, Queen, and 10. But they decided playing a pair of 5s and a few strangled cards. And now on their last hand with 1 discard, there's not many choices. They're kind of stuck in a corner and they have to figure something out. And they decide to play straight with 2 debuff cards, which doesn't even take them to halfway point of the chip minimum. With that final game, ChatGPT has lost its 10th attempt, making Balatro the winner.
Let's go!
Hooray! I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.